Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome to the Amesbury Monthly Poetry Reading Series and the John Greenleaf Whittier Home and Museum. I'm your host, Lisa Usani Phillips. I'm Amesbury's current Poet Laureate. I'm the fourth one. And this series and the Amesbury Poet Laureate Program are sponsored by the Amesbury Cultural Council and the Whittier Home. As nonprofits, we welcome donations at www.whittierhome.org/support-us. Thank you so much for your consideration. Tonight's reading and Q&A session will be recorded, followed by our open mic, which will not be recorded. If you'd like to read, and we hope you will, please sign up using the sheet on the table if you haven't already. And for our Zoom audience, as I mentioned, if you said yes or maybe when you registered, I have you on the list. And if you would like to read but haven't signed up yet, please do drop a note in the chat. And as you can see, after our open mic, Jan will have books to sign and sell. Her books are also available through Amazon, Kevin Carey Press, Copper Dog Books, and Square Books. And all of those are listed with links on her author site at www.januarygilloneal.com/books. It is my absolute honor and joy to introduce January Gill O'Neill to you this evening. She is hands down one of my favorite poets, both for her poetry and her literary citizenship. She is the author of 4 collections of poetry, including 2024's Glitter Road. Her poem, At the Rededication of the Emmett Till Memorial, was a co-winner of the 2022 Allen Ginsberg Poetry Award from the Poetry Center at Passaic County Community College. She has received fellowships from the Massachusetts Cultural Council, Cave Canem, and the Barbara Deming Memorial Fund. And she was the 2019-2020 John and Renee Grisham Writer-in-Residence at the University of Mississippi, Oxford. The Boston Globe's Nina McLaughlin wrote of January's series on Emmett Till, which is in Glitter Road. Emmett was a black 14-year-old boy who was lynched in 1955, and this is what Nina had to say. O'Neill considers what happens when certain stories aren't told, when dust blows off a field of collective forgetting. The past is not the past. These poems impress. It's right here with us, whispering, clawing, singing, making itself known in our bodies. The poet Nin Andrews also captures what I love about Jan's poetry. January Gill O'Neill is a poet you can trust. With every book, every poem, every stanza, she writes with such grace, insight, and clarity. She is a poet who touches the heart within the heart, the muse within the music, the magic within the ordinary. She is, in short, what most poets, including me, can only aspire to be, beautiful and true. Please help me welcome January Gill O'Neill.
Thank you, Lisa. Oh, hello. Well, thank you for coming out tonight, and thank you to the online audience. It's a new thing to have like people here, and then there's people watching from their homes and stuff. So you can do anything tonight. So I'm really glad that you're spending it here with us. So thank you. So I'm going to read from my book Glitter Road, which came out in February. And I like to hold it up because it's very shiny. If I were standing in the light, it would catch the light.
It did.
So this book journeys my time down in Mississippi when I was the John and Renee Grisham Writer-in-Residence at the University of Mississippi. That's when I took my teenage kids, now adults, down there. It was a year of transitions. And so before we got down there, we, encountered a few things that gave us a little bit of pause before we moved. The Emmett Till Memorial, which Lisa described. Emmett Till is a 14-year-old boy who was beaten, shot, thrown into the Tallahatchie River. The marker where he was reportedly pulled out of the water, was shot up, and there were 3 Ole Miss students standing next to the marker, and the marker was just full of bullet holes. That photo of these 3 boys went viral. So that happened. There was a 30-foot statue on the campus of the University of Mississippi, also known as Ole Miss, of a Confederate soldier, been there 100 years. Almost everybody wanted it down. It took a little while to remove. And the state was trying to figure out a new flag because they were still flying the Stars and Bars Confederate flag. It was the last state to do that. So the statue came down in 2020. The flag came down in 2020. We left in early 2020, right after COVID lockdown. So we were there for an academic year. So I'll read a few poems about Mississippi and then mix in some Massachusetts and other poems. On the edge of a field in Sumner, Mississippi, I picked cotton with my bare hands in the town where Emmett Till's killers were acquitted in 1955, at the bottomlands fed by the swollen Tallahatchie. History of the last empire explained in its white, dreamy boils. Cash crop so valuable that plantation owners burned it by the bale to keep it out of Union hands. And I can't help but think about the Negro hands, cracked and worn, twisting the lock from the burr, stripping the stalk from top to bottom, the hard ground broken against weather and weevils, their lives tied together by a parcel of land. Children younger than my own, working from can to can't see, under a blistering sun, hungry, half-paid, or nothing. The debts they would die with, everything weighed down to the fiber, everything done by hand. I break off a branch to feel trauma in my hands, a reminder that I have risked so little to be here, not even the shirt off my back. Thank you. So one of the early things that we did down in Mississippi was attend the rededication of the Emmett Till Memorial, and I got to do that with my daughter. At the rededication of the Emmett Till Memorial, Glendora, Mississippi, October 19th, 2019. He was 14, same age as my daughter who sits beside me on the crowded bus. We travel with police escort like a funeral procession to dedicate the new marker at Graball Landing. Along the dirt road, red spider lilies bloom around gnarled roots of aged oaks. Life grows on among the silent brown branches. Delta dust settles to reveal cotton fields ready for harvest. There have been signs before. 3. Stolen, shot up, tossed in the river. The last one stood just 35 days, riddled with bullets again and again, refusing us the comfort of leaving the past in the past. Till's story requires hardened steel. This marker weighs 500 pounds. It is black, bulletproof, designed to absorb rifle rounds of white supremacy. And my heart curves around the side of this road, reconciling that old hurt with an old resolve. Every time it's taken down, it's going back up. On the Tallahatchie's bank, we honor, we grieve, let our feet sink into the mud while the brown water rages. I still remember that day, and it was, there were like 250 people there, and, now that area is under federal protection, so it's I believe it's part of the National Park Service, so if something happens down there, there'll be trouble. And so we left 2020, and the one thing I didn't really get to do when I was down there was take a canoe ride down the Mississippi River. We were able to do that when we went back in 2021. I go back and forth quite a bit, actually. And in thinking about it, today actually marks 3 years since we went down the the Mississippi. The river remembers. Here, the water is silt brown, stretches mile wide, flat as a washed out conveyor belt, an unhemmed rumble strip. I can't read the river, can't see my hand when it plunges elbow deep to feel the cool against the Mississippi heat, hot as a dog's mouth. Here we canoe for hours through swirling eddies, watch the trash barges and towboats travel downstream. The river glistens hard as broken glass. Here, everything is fluid. In lower Mississippi, the south-south, where the two-lane blacktop cuts through an infinity of flat, cotton, soybean, corn, farm, tumble-down shack. Creeks and rivers bifurcate the land like blood veins. Here, the GPS gives up. New islands form at the current's whim, and what is untouched grows lush and verdant. Willow and privet border the collapsing coastline. A carp leaps into the boat when it hears us coming. We stop here at an oxbow. Gumbo mud sticks to our feet. River rock, plastic, fossils, gar. Raccoon and coyote leave tracks in the rust-colored sand. The slaves, sold down the river, hid here, waited for their chance to escape up north, hid in caves, fled to the Twin Cities and Canada, their fate at the mercy of the river's next rise. Here's the nadir of our suffering, which started in one place to end in another. Here's where flow and marvel and history converge. This harm joy, this beautiful sadness. Thank you. I was thinking as I was reading, hot as a dog's mouth. I'm like, it's not quite that hot, but it's kind of warm. It's a little warm tonight. So, Mississippi, I like to describe as, it's not what you would expect, and it's also exactly what you expect. There are a lot of good people all over the place, and Mississippi is just lush and beautiful. 3 million people there. There's a lot of land down there. I mean, some of it, is untouched. Some of it is, most of it really is sort of tinged with the legacy of slavery. I mean, it is a remarkable place, but it's a reminder for me as a Virginian and a New Englander now to get out of our bubbles and see what else is out there. And so I always like to say that while Mississippi has its problems, there's a lot of good there, and being there on the fellowship was amazing. And so it was the John and Renee Grisham Fellowship at the University of Mississippi. And so it's John Grisham of the movies and the court dramas, The Firm. And I like to read this poem because not too many people can say this, but I can say it. I slept in John Grisham's bed, a bed on stilts, queen-sized, with a well in the center I'd always roll into. White-pilled sheets, threadbare and thinning. I worked hard to earn that bed and the room surrounding it, meaning I must have written words once that meant something. Big wide windows look onto a cluster of magnolias that never lose their leaves. No blinds. I like to let the light in. I imagine John Grisham plotting out a bestseller, legal pad in hand, kids like mine bouncing on a mattress high enough to touch the ceiling fan. This bed I have shared with many authors and lovers who also wrote words that meant something. They slept here too, loved here, on this bed that scoots away from the wooden headboard from too much movement. Can't help but laugh at the bedroom door that doesn't lock, sliding a chair in front of it for privacy, or the attic we were afraid to enter, the creak of the floorboards above our heads. And when I think my big thoughts about the world, time travel, or black holes, or God, or death, I come to the bed's blank page against the shimmer of sky glow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so one of the nice things about Mississippi is that I fell in love there. And so my boyfriend is still there. I was talking to him on the way up. And we're trying to figure out when are we going to see each other. But we've been long distance since, I guess, 2019. At some point, we will be in the same state. But for now, this two-state system is working out okay. Mississippi season. He says I hold my mind well, likes that I put my kids first and have never tried drugs. The lilt in his southern drawl intoxicates me. He likes not being able to have all of me, makes him want me more. Broken finds broken, I say. So when he kisses my neck, along my clavicle, down to my breast, I break all over again, after a drought of no kissing, no touch. How not being chosen can dim any light. For years, I told myself a story I could live with, thought of myself a kind of carnival fish in a plastic bag, floating in my own still water, waiting to be loved. Dumb luck that someone flips a red ring on the mouth of a glass jar, and just like that, I am kissing again, kissing a man so luminous, so beautifully flawed, that I can barely look at him. And my mind, done with all its stories, turns to the carnal, as I rim the hinge of his lips with my tongue and dive into this quenching. And so I said that, thank you. I said this at the Newberry Festival, but this seems appropriate since it's Amesbury. It's not too far from Topsfield. So the sequence of the poem where I say, thought of myself as a kind of carnival fish in a plastic bag floating in my own still water, that's the Topsfield Fair. So it's funny how images just pop into your mind. Anyway. All right, let's see if I can find another poem. Yeah. So this is a form called the pantoum. Some of you know it. It's got a rocking pattern, and I believe it is the second and fourth line become the first and the third in the next stanza. Boyfriend pantoum. Hallmark doesn't make a card for this, for what we mean to each other, for what we do when my kids are asleep. We are not married, not husband and wife. What do we mean to each other? More than lovers, more than friends, but we are not married, not husband and wife. One card says, know what I love about you? Or, to my partner, to my friend, with the inside left blank. My boyfriend asks, what do you know about me? As he brings me water at 3 a.m. With the inside left blank, I write, to the man that I spend my nights with, who brings me a glass of water at 3 a.m., whose body was made to fit inside my body. There's no one else I'd rather spend my nights with. Who are we when my kids are asleep? His beautiful body fits inside my body. Hallmark doesn't make a card for this. Hey. Right. So I'll read a few more. Let's see, maybe 3 more. I don't want everybody to bake in the sun.
Worth it.
Okay. Okay, so this one is for my daughter. So there are a lot of good things I like about this book, but we had trouble with the order and figuring out, what do you do with Massachusetts and Mississippi and Emmett Till and love poems? So we needed a way to organize it, and my editor at Cav and Carey Press said, why don't we make these mini sections? And so in the book, the mini sections are set off by this magnolia, which I don't know if you can see at home, but there is a magnolia image that runs throughout the book. And my daughter, who is now at Mass Art, but was a high school student then, designed the line art for the book. So every time I pick up this book, I think of Ella. So this is a poem for Ella called For Ella. I love a wild daffodil, the one that grows where she's planted along a wooded highway left to its own abandon but not abandoned. Her big yellow head leaning toward or away from the sun. Not excluded, but exclusive. Her trumpet heralds no one, not even the Canada geese, their long-necked honks announcing their journey to somewhere else. She'll be here less than a season. Grace us with her green, slender stems, strong enough to withstand rain and spring's early chill. And when she goes, what remains she'll bury deep inside the bulb of her. Take a part of me with her until she returns. How lucky am I to love this bloom. Okay. So the cover is from a set of maps created in 1944, around 1944, by the Army Corps of Engineers. So it's in the public domain now. But this is map number 7 of 15, and each of these currents is the Mississippi over time. It's over millennia. So each of the colors represents a shift or a turn. And it seemed like the perfect kind of metaphor for, I didn't want like a literal road. And trust me, we looked. And let me tell you, AI is not helpful when you're trying to look at covers. But I have a full copy of this map without the gold foil on it in behind glass, hanging up in my house, and my boyfriend has one in Mississippi also. So this poem is called The Map. As soon as I find it. The Map. Mississippi River Meander Belt, number 7. Mississippi River Commission, 1944. Blues, greens, oranges, and reds shape the paths along a vintage map of the Mississippi, a birthday gift. Back swamps and braided streams loop the river channels thousands of years old, a cacophony of overlapping streams whirling with its tangled beauty. To look at it is a study of the past lives of waters, the meanders, the way water cuts a groove in the earth and changes it forever. The river's ghosts snake and bend over time. It is lovely, alluvial, the memory of a mighty river compressed. At its heart, a jumble of coils and pearls that shapes the soil, constantly repairing the landscape. A repository for memory, preserving a shared moment, as when two people have loved each other well. The topography transforms, diverges over time, cleaves a clearer path to where it was always supposed to go. And thank you. And I will end with the title poem, which I read it now, and it's a post-pandemic poem. It was the last poem I wrote in Mississippi, or about Mississippi. And just for context, I was driving down the road. There was this huge swatch of purple in the road. Didn't know what it was, but it was fascinating. And so I'm always reminded about staying open, and you never know where your poems are going to come from. So this is an example of that. Glitter Road. I'll take my miracles however they appear these days. A salamander poking its head above the bricks, the shocking blue overcoat of the season's first bluebird, a spider web unbroken. At the corner of Molly Bar and McElroy, I saw a thick trail of glitter in the curve of the right turn lane. Fuchsia, heavy shimmer refracting the noonday sun as if laying flat a rainbow's extracted hue. Not paint or blood or a parade shedding its cheer. It's the faded streak of eyeshadow as it trails into flecks, then disappears. I think of cars passing through this moment, their undercarriages aglow with possibility. Hard not to feel good riding a glistening wave, my tires now bespeckled with a purple sheen that's tough to rid or wash away. The road ahead made beautiful by this temporary shine. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And just, like as I was sort of entering the world of Massachusetts poetry and poets, that you're one of the first people that I sort of met that I didn't know who was writing poets and whom I really admired. And you were just so welcoming, and I love the community that you're part of. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, about literary citizenship and what it's meant to you as a poet.
Yeah, thank you. So literary citizenship. I mean, on a local level, it is really me hanging out with my friends and trying to create opportunities, plan, get our work out. I mean, most of you know that if you're a writer or an artist, musician, it's really hard to share your work. You create it, you do a lot of it by yourself. I always think that we're so close to entrepreneurs because we work alone, long hours, no guarantee of success, but we do it because we have no other choice. And so it's nice to be with other people that feel like that and have that drive and dedication to whatever it is. And so whether you're sitting around having coffee with the same people over and over again, or you're in a workshop or doing something more public like this, my fellow literary citizen. I mean, you've got a title that says literary citizen, basically. I think it's vital. And I tell my kids this all the time. If something is missing, then you're probably going to have to be the person that creates it. And so I feel that in all communities. So, people say, how do you get involved in a writer's group? If you don't know where one is, you might have to be the one that sticks your neck out and says, this is missing and we need it. And so I just have carried that through on a larger level because I like to be behind the scenes. I like to be at the table. I like planning. I didn't know I'd be decent at it, but it's fun to do. But sometimes if the right people aren't in the room, then you're not seen or thought about. So in thinking about broadening the audience and making it more diverse and not just racially or ethnically, but for age, for geographic location, gender, all of the varieties that we can do. So if you're not at the table saying we're missing this, then sometimes it gets overlooked. So it's really important to step up when you can. It's not easy, and there are ways. I'll just say one more thing. I don't know if you all saw this, but Florida is not funding any of their arts programs. I mean, they're just not. They're not. DeSantis
I'm not surprised.
took it out, right? But that's what can happen. When you don't have people active in your community saying, wait, stop, don't do this. And it's local. I mean, we have people in the audience who know what it's like to step up and do that. But you can do, you can be a citizen in however way represents your beliefs, So, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
It was a long answer. Anyone else have a question?
I'll ask one.
Sure.
January, how do you think about form these days?
Okay. Yeah. I think form is a great container for poems when you're stuck with an idea and it's not coming together. I think having restrictions and boundaries and conceits that you have to follow, sort of push you in a different direction. I think sometimes you're so focused on form. I'll say I am so focused on form that I worry less about the content. The flip side of that when I'm teaching my students is that sometimes if you're trying to do a rhyme scheme, then you end up trying to play to that rhyme scheme and not think about what the content's about. So I see that with a lot of students when they rhyme. cat, mat, hat. I mean, So, but that's part of the process too. So, I want to do more of it. I mean, sometimes I impose forms. Sometimes I'll write in 3-line stanzas, 2-line stanzas. But the pantoum was a form, and I wrote in this book a lot of American sonnets, which is, as I like to say, if you put American in front of anything, you pretty much do what you want. So I wrote, I broke form and wrote a bunch of 14-lined, 14 unrhymed lines,
Right.
and and that is a form. So it's important in my craft, but it all depends just on the situation when I'm writing. But I believe in form. I'm not good at it all the time, but I believe in it. Joey.
So, like with the Good Road, if a news strikes you when you're driving, what do you do?
That has happened. My iPhone has notes, and I can use like voice activated. I can use Siri to write, and sometimes that's funny when she doesn't interpret me correctly. But there's practice. There's something about trying to remember. Now I have a bad memory, but there is something about trying to remember the lines and then recreate it somewhere else. And sometimes I feel like, well, if I couldn't recreate it, was it really that good of a line? So.
I'm interested in your experience teaching at Ole Miss. Is that it's such a mythical
Right.
place. I just wonder what that was like for you. How the students, what kind of students, and what kind of
Sure. Well, I regularly teach at Salem State. And so I had something to contrast it with. I taught graduate students there. I teach undergraduate students here. I have one class of graduate students in the fall, one undergraduate class in the spring, and they were great. And because, they fund their program, there was a variety of students there. And, I'd say overall, they really strive to make the school affordable and diverse. And part of that is reckoning with their history. It used to be, long ago, it was a Civil War hospital, right? And so they are acknowledging, what happened on that campus and trying to look ahead and look forward. And I'll also say sports are really big down there. And right now they have a coach, Lane Kiffin, who is just a winning coach. And that covers up a lot of ills. Like, you constantly have students coming in and, keeping the school alive where a lot of schools are not doing well. Liberal arts schools are not doing well, but, it was a great experience. It was a well-run, well-kept school that had a great alumni base that would contribute and come out. The students were engaged and interested, and a lot of them came to the program with projects or books that were published. That was new for me.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, they've come fully formed, One of them had a prize-winning book from the University of Wisconsin Press. He is now actually teaching up here at Tufts.
Oh,
So.
Jimmy? Debris?
No. He was just born fully formed, smart. But yes. So. So I'm a Virginia native, so I'm a Southerner at heart. And but I grew up in Norfolk, which is more cosmopolitan. You head out to Roanoke, you head out to different parts of the state. It's I guess more of what you would expect of the South, I guess. And I don't even think that's a fair comparison, but I guess it's more stereotypical. Very rural. So coming to Massachusetts felt natural because I had moved my way up the East Coast and landed in Massachusetts, essentially. But, Mississippi was a fascinating place. As I started talking, I forgot the question. What was the question?
It was sort of about Emmett Till's
The heat.
material
Oh, okay.
and how you
Yeah.
were able to find a way to make something.
I'll be honest. That's the first time in my life where I didn't have to worry about my life. I left here and went down there, and so all the same constraints, when I can't write, I'll flip on the TV or I'll go clean the bathtub, right? All of those problems, what's going on campus. I didn't have those. I had to get out of my way. I had to leave here to write that book. And Emmett Till was a huge part of it. And I also had to reckon with my feelings towards slavery in a real way, right? Mississippi had more slaves than slaveholders at one time. And I swear, I could feel the trauma in the land, right? Again, good people doing great things all over the state. But there is that legacy, and I do believe that there's some aura, some psychic connection to ancestors, to the past. And the past is everywhere. Faulkner is, Faulkner has a home there that the college maintains. And so that's just one example, of them like holding on to this legacy and tradition. Which is great. It's Faulkner, right? But there are a lot of places like that. And the campus reconciles that. As far as Emmett Till goes, I felt like I was open as a writer. And so I could take that in. And, when things happen, you kind of have to look up and say, this is a reoccurrence over and over here. There's so much. There's the blues connection down there with music and jazz. There's the food. There's the legacy. Emmett Till's story was one of the stories, but that's the one that I landed with, And so going to the memorials and the places where the significant moments, like Bryant's Grocery and Meat Market, which is now a dilapidated, empty space. It's still standing, but no one has preserved it. That's part of the story.
Oh.
Yeah, that it's not in a museum. It hasn't been funded by some, government, the parks or the Smithsonian, right? So the fact that the town, the state is letting it go, letting it crumble, that's part of the story. It's, let's forget that history. That was probably the most surprising part about going down and exploring it, about what gets memorialized and what doesn't. Who gets remembered, whose story is told. So. Oh, well, I don't. So the question is, how do I write these stories? Where does the anger go? I can't write in anger because, that feeling when you peek into a room and two people are arguing. I don't ever want my poems to feel like that. They shouldn't feel like a one-sided rant. There's nuance to every situation. And so I think it's almost more important to capture that. And so, there's anger, but, there's also joy. And so you have to talk about the sadness of Emmett Till and the story. I also talk about divorce. So there's that, right? Because then I can celebrate having a boyfriend after coming through.
The word sadness.
Yeah. Beautiful sadness. Yeah. So I try to go for a balance. Poetry is a good way for me to work it out. And not all of my angry poems get published. It probably shouldn't. There's a reason. So, yeah.
I think we'll say thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. This was lovely. Thank you.